Hey, good morning to everybody. Happy Monday. It's Daryl here. It is bright and freaking early, man. It's 3 a.m. here in Connecticut on the East Coast. You'll be watching this video Monday morning. It's actually Sunday afternoon. And the video that I downloaded this morning has been on my mind a lot. There's a few things that I want to add. I want to share some more with you guys. When I do a video, in this video I talked about I started off talking about the Olympic pole vaulter, kind of kidding around, talking about size. And then I moved on to some more serious stuff, talking about some of the stuff that I was caught up in, cross-addicted to, hypersexuality. And when I do a video like this, it affects me. Every word that I say this is true, but I've never told anybody any of this stuff before. The reason I do these videos is because I remember the hopelessness that I had. I've told you guys before, I've been clean and sober since October 23rd of 2006. Before that, I was addicted for 2.5 decades. And I remember the hopelessness because in my situation, my addiction and my sexuality were intertwined at a later point, all through my 40s, all through my 30s, my late 20s and 30s. I got clean when I was 40 years old. It felt hopeless to me, and this is the reason I do this video. That's why I tell you guys these things. It's not easy for me to talk about this stuff. In the video I made this morning, there's one particular part where I tell you guys right up front how that drug affected me, rock, when I smoked it. As soon as I exhaled, and I told you guys, word for word, what went on through my mind, and it's embarrassing, some of the stuff, telling you how, but it's truthful. And I want to make a point on how much, now that I'm clean and sober, for these last 18 years, I look back and I see how much that drug changed me. This is one of the reasons why I stay clean and sober. It's because I look back and I look at the stuff I did and how it affected me. But this is the biggest reason why I throw all this out on the table. Is because I know there was guys around me back when I was using that had the same situation, that had like this hypersexuality, where their sexuality and their addiction were intertwined, where you see a good-looking girl or you see a Playboy magazine and boom, you start thinking of your dealer. The two things become intertwined. And this is the reason I make these videos where I spill my guts like I did this morning and talk about these embarrassing things. It's because I remember the hopelessness. I remember going into rehab and detox over 13 times. And it felt so hopeless. And I never talked about it. Who wants to talk about the stuff I told you guys this morning? The stuff I thought about, going in those adult bookstores, the way I acted. I couldn't talk about that. I never told the doctors about that. I never talked about that in NA groups. Nobody talks about that. That's why I'm talking about it, because I know it affects thousands, tens of thousands of guys. And I'm going to talk about women too, because the more I thought about this, women get caught up in this, in a similar situation with sexuality and using. And I remember when I first started using, it doesn't happen right away. You think you can control it. I'm not, I would never do that stuff. It would never affect me like that. I'm not that kind of person. I'm proud of myself. I would never do that. And then 10 years later, you're still using and you're in a position where you'll do just about anything, to get these drugs or to get money. I remember thinking these things myself. That's crazy. Those people are, they're not like me. I got self-control. I got pride in myself. I would never sink that low. Before you know it, you do. And I know, there's thousands of people out there that do. And I remember the hopelessness because I would think to myself, how am I ever going to be clean? How can I be clean if every time, say I go to get married, say I start dating, and as soon as I see my girlfriend undress, I want to run to the phone and call my dealer. How am I ever going to, how can I live like that? I'm never going to be clean. This is hopeless. I remember the hopelessness. That's why I make these videos. That's why I spill my guts like I did this morning. Because I was shocked to find, for the first, I'd say at least 3 to 5 years, I had to stay completely away. I didn't have any relationships for 7 years. My first relationship was 7 years after I got clean. I wouldn't look. When I remember going into the gas stations and seeing the adult books on the shelf, and I would start to get that feeling. What's my dealer's phone number? Stuff like that. I had to stay away from that stuff. But here's the thing, this is the reason I make these videos, because by doing that, after a while, it faded. The two things came apart. My sexuality, my drive, and my addiction, my triggers they became unentwined. And that's why I want to give you guys hope. I've had two great relationships, normal. I mean, the girls I dated, Audrey and the other girl, Paula, were successful women that had their own home. They owned their own homes. They owned their own businesses. Audrey was divorced. Paula was divorced. Paula had children. They were intelligent, successful, clean and sober women that I could have, beautiful women that never in my wildest dreams back when I was using that I thought I would be able to have a relationship like that. And the great thing is, once you get in a relationship like that, you realize that you deserve that. And you won't settle. I know there's women that I used to party with or use with, and I have to stay away from them. There's no going back to any of those women for anything. And it's not because they're bad people, but it's because they're triggers for me. I want to talk about this a little bit too. In NA groups, all the groups I went to never talked about this. The guys that did. The only time I've heard guys talk openly and honestly about this was on Steve O's show. Steve O from Jackass. How him and I think the guy's name is Brandon something or other. And they were talking right up front about the stuff they did, in bathrooms with other guys for money. And they kidded around about it, but they were open and honest. That's the only time I've ever, very few times, guys, so that's why I take it upon myself. I'm 58 years old. I know who I am right now. The way I look at it too, after I download a video like that where I spill my guts and I tell you guys the stuff I told you guys in this video this morning, I think to myself, well, what if I apply for a job? What about my next relationship? What if the woman I want to date, wants to watch these videos and she hears this stuff that I did? The thing is, I'm 58 years old and I know who I am right now. And honestly, at this point in my life, I don't see myself going to apply at McDonald's or anywhere really. I'm making my own money painting and doing this YouTube channel and through some other graphic arts work. And with a relationship, I'll be honest, then I would hope that a future relationship, the woman would understand that the reason I'm doing these videos, the reason that I'm being upfront. Here's the thing too, Audrey, we never talked specifically about it, but the girl that I lived with for 4 years, and she passed away from COVID in 2021. And she was addicted to coke, and she was an alcoholic, and she did a lot of stuff too. She never got specific, but stuff that was degrading. When I was in NA and AA groups, this is something else too that a lot of women won't talk about, and it affects women too. Like I talk about the hypersexuality with guys, with a large portion of women, they end up trading their body for drugs or for money. And this is when I was in close groups where we could talk, where people trusted each other, some specific NA groups where there was trust amongst the small group, we would talk about stuff like this, and I was amazed that I'd say like 90% of the women that were in these recovery groups had used their bodies. And like I said, it affects, and these are the kind of things when you first start out using drugs, you tell yourself, I would never do that. I'm strong. I got pride in my, and that's why I'm making this video, because things change. After all these years, I look back at what those drugs did to me, the way I acted. The most embarrassing thing in the video I made this morning is when I told you guys what I was thinking after I took that hit and I started driving towards the adult bookstore. And I told you guys that I was going to be, I would start to think like I'm going to be dirty, I'm going to get, stripped down and be a slut, and I thought about that. And it's embarrassing. I'm like, I can't believe I actually said that, and part of me wants to delete the video. But it's the truth. It's what these drugs did to me. I mean, you look at drugs like meth and cocaine, and they really do affect your brain to a point where you act completely out of character. Like I told you guys, when you use these things, within a split second of exhaling, your priorities just flip. It affects you profoundly on a level in your brain that changes who you are, what your priorities are, what your morals are, what excites you. It's scary looking back at it. And one more thing, like I was saying about how women have traded their bodies. And I've done this before too. This is something else. I'll tell you guys this story. The surprising thing is, this was a doctor. This was a well-to-do doctor that paid me. One evening we were using, me and two of my friends, smoking rock, and we ran out of money. And we got in the car and we drove to a neighborhood. And one of these guys, I knew that he actually sold himself on the streets of this, where the guys cruised at night around this block. And I knew he did this, but he didn't know that I knew. So he's like, well, let's go down there. I know how to scam these guys and get money. He went out. He said, let's all go down there and we'll do a scam on them. And in my head, I already knew, that he sold himself down there for this. So we all went down there, and this is what happened. We're sitting on the side of the road, and a car pulls up, and it's a Cadillac. This was probably in the late 80s. It's a Cadillac DeVille or something, a brand new Caddy. A guy in a white suit with a tie driving, and he calls me over. So I'm like, I'll scam this guy. I'll get some money out of him. I'll jump out of the car. And I end up jumping in the car with this guy and taking off. And he ended up offering me $50 to service me. And I let him do that. And I remember him telling me he was a doctor, that he had a practice there in Waterbury, a well-to-do doctor with kids and wife. He told me this after, as he was sitting there and I was cleaning up and everything. And by the time we were done, he dropped me off. My friends were gone. So I had to walk home from the city. I had to walk like 6 miles home. I got home at like 3 in the morning. And I didn't want to tell my friends this, so I made up this lie that the guy, I got in a fight and I tried to scam him for money. And I ended up, grabbing a handful of money and jumping out of the car. And, I made it like I was a tough guy, and I lied to my friends. They probably, honestly, just like I knew this guy was the other guy, my other friend was lying to me, they probably knew I was lying to them. But I sold myself, when I saw that $50 in his hand, just to let him, and I would have never thought I would do that. Never in a million years. There's nothing about guys that attracts me. I'm a straight guy, but I wanted that hit so much. I would have done it in a second right then. I would have kept doing it if I had the guy's phone number. This is what these drugs do to you. When I first started using them, I would have never dreamed I'd be doing this stuff. Never in a million years. I looked down on the people that did this. That's not me. I would never do that. Those people are not like me. And I became one of those people, just like all the people I knew, just like all the people I was in rehab and detox with. It happens. It happens to everybody that gets caught up in these drugs. These drugs change your morals. They change your priorities. They change you on a basic level, and it takes a long time. It takes a long time to get back. Like I said, I was hopeless. I felt hopeless that I would never be able to have a normal relationship. The sexuality and addiction was so intertwined. But this is the reason I'm making the video, because now those two things, I can have a normal relationship. I've had 2 normal, great relationships. Loving. I lived with a woman. We were intimate 5, 6 times, 7, 8 times a week. I remember Paulo, it was like 6 times in one weekend. But it's not the same. It faded away. I forgot about the numbers. I forgot about the dealers. And then I started realizing how much that drug changed me, and it started to scare me. I started to realize what that drug did to me, and I didn't, I'm happy with who I am now. I'm very happy. I've never been happier. This is why I make these videos. This is why I spill my guts and tell you guys these things that are shameful to me, really. I think about this. What if my family sees these videos? Eventually they will, you know, but they know me. They love me. They know who I am now in my heart, and they know what the drugs did to me. And I explain it. I've already explained it to them, that I make these videos and I tell people this to give other people hope that there is recovery. Recovery is possible. I'm a living, breathing, successful example of that. I've been clean and sober since October 23rd, 2006. Recovery is possible. It's a good life. It's a great life. Have a good Monday.